This is Infosec Decoded, number 73 with poor Elon. And we're starting with Alan, who has discovered that climate change is not happening or something of that sort.
Actually, climate change is happening, but almost half of Americans, 45% of Americans, believe that humans are not responsible for climate change, and the climate's just changing on its own without any human intervention.
Oh, it's not like aliens or
That's
the
what I was.
Democrats or anything like
No,
that.
no, I guess the weather is just temperamental, and Earth is temperamental and just does weird things from time to time and decides to get warmer and change itself.
Mhm.
Obviously, the weather voted for Biden.
Yeah. So Vice magazine and The Guardian have conducted a poll of 1,000 Americans, this just in advance of the climate summit that's happening in Scotland. And also perfect timing, just as the Build Back Better $500 billion bill seems to be on its way to passage. And they found that, among other things, 45% of Americans don't believe that humans are responsible for climate change. Now, contrary to what you may have heard on certain news sources, a majority of Americans do believe that climate change is real, interestingly. And so a majority of Americans actually think that climate change is happening. It's just that people aren't entirely clear why the climate change is happening at all. And of course, this breaks down on party lines, very strongly on party lines.
Yeah.
Democrats, at about 80% think that warming is caused by human activities, while only 24.5% of Republicans think that it's caused by human activities. And that brings us to about 50% of independents that believe that humans are responsible for global warming. So it's clearly a highly, highly partisan opinion. But the other component of this study looked at the people's opinion of oil companies and oil companies' culpability in creating climate change. And
Now,
again,
that you're getting to the point, I think. Yeah.
what's that?
That, I think, is the point.
Yeah, that is really the point. And I should say that these overall opinions of climate change and human culpability, these have been questions that have been asked in polls for years now. And the results are surprisingly consistent. The results of this poll are about the same as another poll I found conducted by Pew Research 10 years ago, or 13 years ago, actually. So nothing's really changing. But anyway, there were questions about the opinion of companies. And of course, the oil companies didn't look very good in this. But what I found especially interesting was they asked people questions about various types of companies, not just oil companies, but also retailers, tobacco companies, and tech companies. And people were asked on a 5-point scale, do you have a very positive to very negative view of such and such company? And the oil companies actually did okay. Like BP, only 5% of respondents had very positive views, but only 16% had a very negative view of BP. Meanwhile, another company, a tech company, Amazon, 20% very positive. That was the highest of any company. And only 11% have a very negative view of Amazon. But the company that had the worst showing, or almost the worst, second only to Marlboro, was Facebook. Only 5% of people have a very positive view of Facebook. 36% have a very negative view of Facebook. So if this study tells us anything, it's that Facebook is the loser in climate change surveys.
Well, they didn't put the U.S. Congress on there. It would have scored even lower, I think.
No, that's true. They didn't put government in this section, But they did ask questions about how people viewed the government's culpability in creating or contributing to climate change. And a lot of people actually do hold the government responsible. 21% hold the government completely responsible, and 30% hold government mostly responsible.
Well,
So
that
that's
seems
not
reasonable. I
much
think the
different
government is
from-
our only hope.
Well, at this point, yes. Yes, but people aren't blaming oil and gas companies perhaps quite as strongly as one might expect. Instead, they're blaming the government. Now, I'd really like to know what the party breakdown is on this, whether it's Democrats who blame the government or Republicans who blame the government, but they don't break that down in the results.
Well, you can't expect the oil companies to do the right thing on their own. I mean, it's suicide.
Well, apparently not. Maybe some people have simply given up on the oil companies doing the right thing.
Well, I think that's the only reasonable thing. I mean, it's just capitalism. The oil companies are in the business of making money and to hell with tomorrow. That's how our system works. And the government is the only thing that is supposed to have any long-term planning, which is not working out that well.
Well, it's not working out that well, although I guess people do have a certain insight into oil companies' motivations and incentives.
Yeah. Well, it's this, and it's nothing new. And the oil companies have created this, I think, but their propaganda. They modeled it after the tobacco company. First, they tried to make people doubt that climate change was happening at all. Now they can't make that happen. So they just come up with another thing, which is that, oh, it's inevitable anyway. So we might as well just burn all the gas and it'll be fine. They push anything that makes more profit for them. It's the American capitalist system working as designed, as intended, I think.
Apparently so, yes.
But there is supposed to be a layer of government regulation on top, and that is not working.
Well, with the Build Back Better bill that seems to be on its way to passage, there are.
It seems to me like I was trying to, if I wasn't a good enough artist, I was going to put up a cartoon of 2028 Biden dead on his tombstone says we'll have that bill any day now.
Well, it's not his fault,
Oh, you may, I don't know. It might be his fault, but in any case, it reminds me very much of Obama with his healthcare. I think he could very well spend 8 years trying to pass this and then fail. Anyway. You think you're really going to pass it?
Well, that's what people are saying.
Yeah, they said they were going to pass it yesterday morning. I heard that.
Yeah.
And then they didn't.
Joe Manchin was really the stumbling block and has been for a long time. And he's finally agreed to it.
Yeah, and so now the House progressives blocked it because they decided to pass the other one first so they would have no leverage anymore. So they just seem to have it reminds me of nuclear arms treaties. They've got, or the Israel-Palestine, they've got 3 or 4 people there with incompatible positions that won't move. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see what comes of it all. Anyway, the next one I've got, I thought this was very interesting. It's highly recommended by a guy on Twitter and really very interesting. They explain how Twitter rolled out 2-factor authentication, which everybody needs to do. And they said, you could try something awesome at your company. You could try actually rolling out 2-factor before you get hacked. A monumental thought, because usually people only respond after they get hacked. And this is very helpful because it's not easy to roll out 2-factor authentication. It took Twitter 3 months, and they talk about which keys to buy and which services work and how to have workarounds and help desks and everything. It really is a mess. And they found keys that work by NFC and USB, so you can use them on phones and on laptops. And they explained how to buy them, how to distribute them, how to implement them, how to replace them when they get busted or lost. They distributed 2 keys to every person, so they had a backup. And and they talked about how to deal with the systems that are not compatible with 2-factor authentication. There's just a lot of useful tips. And I think everybody really should implement this project because there's really no choice. You're going to have to do it probably within the next 12 months. Every company is going to have to go to 2FA if they haven't already, and you might as well just do it now. Anyway, that's what I found. And then Kaitlyn has the #1 story, Elon Musk. Poor Elon Musk.
Yeah, Elon Musk is unfortunately being bullied by the government, and he's complaining. So Fortune.com has a article written by Sophie Miller talking about how Elon Musk is telling Congress to drop the billionaire tax because it will mess with his plan to get humanity to Mars. You see, if you want to expand humanity to Mars, you can't tax Elon Musk. That is the most important thing, but the government is just insistent on taxing him for some reason. And so there's a few tweets by Elon explaining his position. He says, according to their own estimates, the tax only covers about 10% of the 3.5 trillion spending bill. Where does the other 90% come from? The answer is you. You're going to have to pay the rest of the taxes. He also points out that the U.S. national debt is 28,900 billion, meaning that taxing all the billionaires at 100% would only make a small dent. Spending is the real problem. Clearly, instead of spending it on taxes and public infrastructure, we should be spending it on private projects to send Elon and his friends to Mars. Furthermore, Elon Musk, and this is from another article, let me see if I can't pull it up here. So MSN has an article where Elon Musk is saying if you tax billionaires, they'll start taxing regular people too, which I thought was a fair point.
How does that logic work? I don't get that.
Says first he started taxing billionaires.
Yes.
And then Elon says, well, they're just going to get hungrier and hungrier and hungrier for more money. And then they're going to start taxing the rest of us.
Well, the only thing that they've even proposed is taxing people that make over 400 grand. So that's not really the rest of us, not any of us, I think.
Well, no, well, Elon's saying that the rest of us will start getting taxed if, they start run out of that money. It's a slippery slope. You see, it's a slippery slope argument that's always very valid and not at all a logical fallacy.
Well, we used to tax everybody like as recently as 5 years ago before the Trump tax cuts. We used to tax the rich people and the corporations and stuff. It wasn't like the crisis he's making it sound.
Right. I mean, there's a few things going on here. First of all, I think one thing I want to acknowledge, and Sam brought this up before the podcast, is that going after individuals and taxing individuals, I think, is a bad policy. Just because you don't like their politics, you don't like how rich they are, that doesn't mean you should target them for taxation. But that said, though, if you do not tax the ultra wealthy, you create an unstable and precarious economic condition for the entire country. And that's the biggest problem when you sort of collect wealth at the top and not tax it and not really redistribute it, which is the most important thing. It stalls the economy. So you really need that tax of the wealthy. And I know the wealthy does not like it, but it's important for the good of the economy as a whole. And of course, the other thing too is that it's not fair to wage earners like us, like me, like us on the podcast, who are paying the brunt of taxes. We're paying most of our salary, or a good chunk of our salary, is going to taxes, while billionaires, millionaires, oftentimes avoid taxes altogether. And that's not. I mean, there's a moral argument to be made that that's not fair. We should be. I'm not saying we should do a flat tax. I don't want to make someone making $20,000 a year spend half their money on taxes. That's not fair either. But there needs to be some sort of balance here where we can have a good, stable economy. We can fund public works projects, fund our way out of debt, and make sure everyone is paying their fair share of taxes and not use the leverage they have with the government due to their power attained through monetary means to escape, their responsibilities. And it's just so telling that Elon Musk does not really realize how much the rest of us are paying in taxes when he says things like the rest of us will start, paying taxes too. Well, yeah, we've been paying taxes all along. It's part of life.
Yeah, I mean, that's the current system, but I mean, it's all going down to our division. Since we are so divided, we now have the Citizens United, and so now we have decided that the rich should need to pay nothing, and the rich should in fact run the government. So this is, in France, the poor would have actually rebel and tear down the rich at some point, but that never seems to happen in America. In America, all the poor people think that they could be rich tomorrow for some reason, even though the chance of that is very low. So, but I mean, I think until we heal our current division, we're not going to get anywhere at having a fair tax code. It'd be nice to have an actual graduated tax code where the rich pay more, but we've never had that in my lifetime. What we had was effectively a flat tax before the tax cuts. And
Right.
now we got a negative tax where the rich pay nothing and the poor pay it all. Or really
Right.
the middle class pay it all.
Right. And the other part of this article too is this really ridiculous idea of going to Mars, especially as a private project. I could talk for days on this, but there's so many things wrong with this. First of all, a trip to Mars is likely either a one-way or a one-way and a trip to the hospital for a few years. If you get back to Earth, because of the radiation, you're going to get cancer, right? You're going to get radiated on the way there. You're going to get radiated on the surface. You're going to come back. You're going to get cancer, and it's not going to be fun.
Yeah.
The other thing too, of course, is that there's really not a whole lot you can do on Mars.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go there, you can set up a camp and do stuff. I mean, this is purely a vanity sci-fi project Elon Musk wants to do. This is not something that's going to benefit humanity. I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, this is much less glamorous, but if you want to do something with actual practical value, setting up bases on the moon would be much more practical. It's not glamorous. I mean, and people understand that, because I think people in their head, they see the surface of Mars in pictures and it looks a little like Earth, right? It looks kind of like a red desert. But it's not like Earth. It's cold. It is like Antarctica cold. There is an atmosphere. It's about 1% of Earth, not breathable. There's basically no atmosphere. I mean, there's no practical atmosphere. You can't breathe outside. And there's no magnetosphere, so you're also getting radiated on the surface. You'd have to live underground in bunkers that are essentially just space stations on the surface of Mars. I mean, there's nothing there, and there's no practical reason to go there, unless you're doing some sort of science, which should be publicly funded, because we should all be getting the benefit of that. So, I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous to go to Mars in the first place. And the other thing too, of course, is that, the sort of the billionaire take, and the fact that we give this guy credence, like his opinion matters, when it so clearly does not. He is absolutely clueless on this stuff.
I'm afraid his opinion does matter, and this is why I have sympathy for the government of China that crushed their billionaires and their high corporations. I mean, these rich people like Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and Bill Gates are as important as entire nations now.
Should they be that important?
I think not, but the fact is, in our system, you do get to become sort of a god or a king after you get rich enough, and then you can drag the whole world your direction.
Yep.
It's a very strange system, and I don't really blame China for rebelling against it and saying, we do not want that. We don't want billionaires shoving the whole nation around. Anyway, then we got Irvin, who has got community colleges are going to get some money, supposedly.
No, not money.
Okay.
No, not money.
Well,
what Microsoft wants to do is to take their new content, because they want to fill cyber jobs. They've made content to help educate, to fill those roles, and want to give it to community colleges so that they teach it.
Didn't they always do this? They had the official Microsoft courses.
They did, but remember, those certs died.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, those certs expired.
They don't have the Microsoft server cert and all that anymore?
Nope, those are gone.
What are you supposed to do?
They made little certs to replace them.
Okay, and are these tied to those certs?
No. This is to fill cybersecurity jobs, not the MCSA.
So they made their own version of Security Plus or something?
Basically, they're making their own version of Security Plus, and they want to put it in community colleges and universities. And I laughed at that, because that's why I'm in trouble.
Well, because you updated, without.
Yep.
I mean, what is the advantage? Why does this exist? We already have security.
Because schools have failed. So industry wants to do what they do of trying to catch people up. They want to train folks to hire, just like Google did with their cert, and Splunk has with their stuff. Everybody's, all of industry is doing this.
But but they say they're going to provide scholarships. See, Google made their own colleges where you don't go to college, you go to Google. Sounds like Microsoft wants to work through community colleges, which would probably be cooperating with them better.
And that's where I laugh, because I hope that they're ready to wait 2 years at least to
get approval.
To get approval alone.
Yeah, I know, that's the problem. That's why the private sector kind of takes over, because the college system is too stodgy and slow.
Yep.
Yeah, well, anyway, so it doesn't look like they have the specifications yet of exactly what these curriculums are.
No, they don't.
Okay.
Because I hopefully they're smart enough to realize this is not happening tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, one thing I also know is that there's vendors constantly come to colleges and want you to teach their stuff. And most of the time you have to say no because they're not important enough. But I think Microsoft is important enough that you might want to just follow their plan.
And wait 2 years.
Well, unless you have a way of defeating your administration, like working around them.
Yep.
But that I think is true everywhere. Everywhere you go, but in the private sector, it's better than it is at colleges. But pretty much everywhere you go, there's like people holding back progress, and you have to somehow sneak past them. Anyway, all right. And Alan's got PKI.
Yes, a study from DigiCert, which is one of the big certificate authorities of the world. They have a study saying that there are a lot of unmanaged or improperly managed certificates that are floating around out there. As a matter of fact, they claim that there are 43% more certificates that enterprises should be managing and aren't doing a very good job of. And this is all because of the big work from home movement over the past year and a half. A lot of organizations have shifted to or tried to shift towards a more zero trust model, which is predicated on the very heavy use of certificates, which is all well and good. But the problem is when you have a number of different entities within an organization that then start handing out certificates to end users, and the management of these certificates then is no longer centralized, and it becomes a big administrative hassle. So according to this study, nearly half of the surveyed organizations are encountering rogue certificates frequently. So this means that you have not the IT department, but some other random department starting to hand out certificates. And this is a huge security issue because, well, first of all, the legitimacy of those certificates is questionable, but then also the renewal of those certificates, the use of those certificates is highly questionable too.
People are using personal certificates. I've never used them.
Well, within organizations, apparently there is some use of certificates at the end user.
Boy, I mean, I'm working for a lot of big companies and they're not using it anyway.
Yeah, so
They should.
Well, if they can manage them correctly, maybe they should.
Yeah, and DigiCert, by the way, is all for people using them. They want to encourage as many people to use certificates as possible. The more, the better. But who knows? Maybe they're releasing a product that helps companies manage their certificates. And so this is what they're trying to emphasize through this study.
Well, it sounds like you'd have to, because, I mean, what are you going to do when they expire and when people lose them and when they get stolen and all that? You've got to.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So it's very clear that management is a very big issue, and that, yes, probably companies do need to do a better job of managing them. They claim in the study that large enterprises typically manage more than 50,000 different certificates. So clearly there is some kind of need. I don't know where they got that number from, but clearly there is some kind of need for management here.
Yeah. And isn't it just like passwords, only more confusing?
Yeah. I guess that's what people say about zero trust now.
I know. I mean, it doesn't it just mean now you have like another password manager for all these damn certificates and
Yeah, right. Yeah.
and you don't know what's going on with them. I'm not looking forward to that step forward.
Right. As soon as we do away with passwords and replace them with certificates, people are going to be complaining bitterly about certificates.
It seems to me like two-factor authentication and biometrics is far more reasonable.
Yeah, I don't think DigiCert's in the business of biometrics just yet. So
Yeah.
wait a couple of years and then they'll release a study on the importance of biometrics.
Yeah, but I mean,
I was
that's
gonna,
yeah. Go ahead.
so certs are part of two-factor auth. So you'd have a password or a PIN,
Yep.
and then a cert. And the whole idea behind things like the TPM is that's exactly how they work. So a TPM has a certificate built in that is linked to sort of the boot parameters of the computer, so that you enter a PIN and it looks at the boot parameters, and then it can use the certificate and the private key to sign a request to get into your system essentially, and that's what it's for.
But that certificate doesn't expire and you never see it and you don't have to manage it, right?
It's managed for you on your system. It's managed, yeah.
Well, if they automate it so the end user doesn't have to deal with it, then that might be all right.
That's exactly how corporate end user certificates work. It's all managed by management, and they usually give you some sort of two-factor auth device, like a YubiKey, and that YubiKey contains your certificate that you use to, second auth stuff.
So okay. Well, if I don't see it and I don't have to handle it, then I guess that's all right. Yeah, the YubiKey is a certificate. That's a fair statement. Yeah. It's just packaged in a convenient way.
Right. End users don't realize they're using a certificate, just like people who are now familiarizing themselves with TPMs probably don't realize there's certificates on there as well, but there are. And
well, if that's what they're talking about, then that's fine. And I am using that. I mean, that's just normal two-factor. But I don't think the end user should ever see the certificate any more than they should ever see inside the registry.
Exactly.
All right. Well, that's good. And so now we're down to yeah, this one I thought is very interesting. This guy in Israel has a new Wi-Fi attack. I did not know this. The only Wi-Fi attack I knew against WPA is you have to catch the four-way handshake with the EA Paul and then crack that. But there is a new feature in modern Wi-Fi devices where they have roaming turned on. So it can connect to the next router because you are a big company. You have multiple routers in the same extended service set. And the signal sent to the next roaming router is not very strong. It is basically just a hashed password, the 4,000 rounds of a SHA hash, a PBKDF2. And so you can capture that and it's sending it all the time. You don't have to have any clients connected or anything. It is constantly sending these beacons out to connect to the next router. And apparently this feature is turned on with home systems where there's only one router and there's no need for it. So you can pick up a single packet by just sniffing in promiscuous mode, and then you get a hash you can just crack. And he says, in Israel, many people use their cell phone number as the key. So it's just a 9 or 10 digit number. And he said, you can try all of them in like 9 minutes on a home laptop, calculating the hashes. So he was able to hack like 70% out of 5,000 hashes in Tel Aviv with a normal laptop in a reasonable amount of time. So that's very interesting. Obviously, the home users should turn off that roaming mode, and the roaming mode should probably be improved to be more secure, I guess. It's the first significant Wi-Fi vulnerability I've seen in years.
Or, they should just not use wireless.
Well, I don't know what you're talking
about. That's the best idea I ever heard and will have no negative consequences whatsoever.
Well, actually, if they used 5G or 3G or 4G instead, they would be a lot safer. Yeah. But anyway, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Anyway, Kaitlyn has got the Bluetooth.
Right. So this stuff has been hair-raising in terms of drama and what's going on in the industry. So the Washington Post has a article talking about, well, it's written by Heather Kelly, and it's talking about the new like air tags. So, okay, so the new air tags are really funny. So there is this company called Tile, and they had one of their chief people talking in Congress. I think her name was Kirsten DeRue, talking in Congress about anti-competitive practices by Apple. Turns out when you submit something to the Apple Store, you have to like tell them exactly how it works and give them blueprints and stuff like that. And then days before, Mrs. DeRue went to Congress to talk about Tile. Apple releases these like air tags, which are a complete copy of Tile, which was, I mean, you can imagine, I can just imagine how shocked Tile was. And then having to go to Congress like 2 days later, like what was Apple thinking? Anyway, so now Apple has these air tags that you can put in items, you can hide in your laptop, you can hide in your bike. And if someone steals it, you can now start tracking your items. Well, this brings up a lot of questions, and this sort of self-security, I guess, ecosystem has been expanding for a few years now. Like you have Nest and you have these cameras on all the doorbells now. And now we're starting to add trackers to everything. And so now what do you do when you have a tracker in your device and someone steals your device? This is a problem. On the one hand, the cops say don't go off and do anything yourself, right? Because you could be getting yourself into a lot of problems. Also, stuff that's stolen tends to get sold really quickly. So the person you're confronting likely, there's like a 50% chance that they have no idea where it came from or that it was even stolen in the first place. It's just some sucker that was like, oh, a bike for $50. You got to be kidding me. Of course I'll take it. So, the cops are saying don't do this. But on the other hand, if you go up to the cop and you say, hey, I have this Wi-Fi device sending Bluetooth signals at 2.4 gigahertz, and there was a stronger signal at this address, which I geolocated using GPS signals, that I was able to receive. The cops are going to look at you and be like, sorry, what? What is going on? You're speaking English, sprechen Sie English, please. So it's a big mess. What do you do? And so there's one incident in this article where someone's laptop got stolen. He did end up going to the police. The police knocked on the door and just asked nicely, could you, is there a laptop in there? Can you return it? And the person with the stolen property was nice enough to return it. The thing is that the person with the stolen property was like, no, there's no laptop in here. I don't know what you're talking about. The cops couldn't do anything.
Well, they'd have to go get a search warrant or something. And besides, if I was his lawyer, I would say, don't return it because that's an admission of guilt.
Yes. Yeah. Don't return it. And most of the stuff stolen, even a laptop, is small claims. You're not going to be able to get much traction because the cops have much more important things to do. And thankfully, I think nowadays cops are focusing more on the more important things, which is why there's no more laws on the road.
Well, I hope they're actually doing something important. They don't seem to be doing anything at all.
I will tell you that when I dealt with the cops, when someone murdered someone and broke into my house, they were there instantly. I mean, they're still doing the important stuff. Okay, so that's good.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
I heard the Krispy Kreme had a good run.
Yeah. So yeah, the cops are focusing more on the important stuff. And then the idea, there's just been a social push recently to have the other people handle things like people who are crazy in the street and need mental services to have someone else step in. But anyway, politics aside, so yeah, I mean, there's just not a whole lot the cops can do, especially because a lot of the stuff that's stolen, even if it's quote unquote expensive, is not expensive enough to warrant a search warrant. It's not expensive enough to warrant, going in there and really prosecuting these people. All the bad guys really have to do is lie. And so what do you do? I don't know. That's what this article is talking about, is there's really no clear-cut solution to any of the new issues that have been brought up by these devices.
I liked one of the stories, somebody lost a bike, or the bike was stolen. The person followed them, found the guy sleeping with a bike and just grabbed it and ran.
Yeah. But you could get killed that way.
That's what the article is saying.
Yeah, you absolutely could get killed. The person who stole it could be mentally unstable. People who steal things are generally not in the mindset of being
Long-term thinking.
Yeah, they're not thinking long-term, they're thinking short-term survival. They're in survival mode, right? They're in I need drugs now, right? I need to pay off loan sharks that are gonna come and kill me, and then you're coming in and stealing, quote unquote, stealing back your stuff. And yeah, it could be dangerous.
I heard there's a game that can help with that.
Yeah, it's something to do with Sea Life, I believe.
Yeah, something like that.
What's this? There's a game?
There's a game you can play. You can win like a whole bunch of won to pay back a bunch of debts to loan sharks. It's pretty popular.
Oh, is that what Grand Theft Auto is about?
It's named something else. I forget, but it's
Okay. I didn't know that.
You jump on like glass tiles and stuff and you win a bunch of money.
Okay. Well, I think Americans just have a huge problem with materialism. I heard an interview a few years ago of people in Canada, and they said, hey, do you lock your door? He said, no, I don't bother. And he said, have you had your stuff stolen? He said, yeah, there was some stuff stolen. He said, well, then did you start locking your door? And he said, no, I still don't bother. They said, do you have a gun? He said, well, yeah, I've got a gun, but I'd never shoot anybody. And, it's like, they just have a different attitude.
Yeah, but that's Canadians. I
know.
They're different people.
I mean, there is a slight difference between someone stealing like a hose, or if someone stole, I don't know, like an old monitor, let's say it's worth like $50, I wouldn't care. I'd just be like, take it, you need that monitor, I'm sure it's very important to you, have fun with it. If someone stole my $2,000 laptop, then we sort of have a problem, because I can't replace that very easily. It's very important, has my work on it, etc.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, Americans are just very angry, very hostile, very likely to start a fight over things. It's not healthy.
It's not healthy. And I think once again, it gets back into that survival mode.
Yeah.
Where we live in this hyper-capitalist society where we're just fighting for survival. We're not really working to enrich ourselves. We're working to survive in a system that really pits us against each other, which creates this atmosphere.
Yes, I think
that game is the solution.
You got to find the name of that game. If you
it's like calamari game or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if it's the solution to our ills, you totally have to give a link so that people can play it and thus be freed from all this misery. But in the meantime, why don't you tell us about this botnet torrenting Ubuntu? I had trouble understanding this one.
So this one is more of a research type of thing. Basically, what this person found is that there's a number of the folks who are torrenting like Ubuntu, the ISOs, are from China, and they're not really pulling anything. They're just basically ghost bots who aren't doing much. At least my understanding is that could be used to make a botnet, is just do that over torrent.
Right, that's what I thought here. I mean, he found that they are asking for shards, but then they are always rejecting them and claiming they're invalid and just asking again. So it's sort of like a distributed denial of service attack against a torrent.
Yes.
Just wasting your time a little bit, but not enough to bring down the torrent. So it's just sort of mysterious kind of traffic from a few thousand machines in China for no apparent purpose.
Well, no apparent purpose right now.
Yeah. And so they wonder if they're making some kind of botnet that communicates by rejected torrent signals, which I guess would be possible.
That's my thinking too, is that, yeah, that could be possible.
Yep. Or some kind of misconfigured experimental thing or something. Yeah. Anyway, it's sort of interesting the way he managed to track down what was happening.
Yes.
But it's just one of those strange curiosities on the internet, weird network systems that have no apparent purpose.
Yeah. I kind of feel like there's something up about that, but we don't quite know yet.
Yeah. Well, I remember there was a huge botnet years ago on Windows systems that got up to like 10 million and never did any harm. And everybody freaked out. It was there for years and they never used it to do anything bad. Infected all these machines, but it never really made an attack or stole their passwords or anything. Everybody freaked out until they fixed it. There are just defects in the criminal ecosystem where half-formed plans just wander around and don't actually ever hit the punchline. Anyway, Alan has the most important story there could ever be, a lack of candy corn.
Candy corn is under threat. You know, there are so many ransomware attacks these days that even we here on this podcast have stopped talking about them because for the most part, they aren't very interesting.
Well, let me ask the all important question. Does anybody actually like candy corn? This stuff is awful. I mean,
some people do.
When I was a kid, I couldn't stand this stuff. Does anybody want this stuff? Did any of you ever like this stuff?
I kind of enjoy the waxy texture of candy corn. It's like eating candles.
It is like eating candles. Yuck.
But there may not be candy corn on your block this year because Brax candy corn, which is actually owned by Ferrara Candy, was hit with a ransomware attack earlier in October. And this apparently interrupted their production and inventorying systems. So they were in serious trouble. Not only candy corn, but also nerds and sweet tarts and trolley gummy worms were under threat because Ferrari Candy lost access to their systems for a while. However, they say that they've got the situation under control. No mention of whether or not they paid the ransom, but they claim to have restored their systems and that they are now producing and shipping candy once again. So it's likely that at least some candy corn will be out there and available to torment another generation.
And this is why Willy Wonka uses the Oompa Loompas.
Yeah.
I guess they're much more reliable than using computers, aren't they?
Yep.
And from what I read, I guess you're supposed to hand out CBD candy instead, is what people are talking about.
That's the new razor blades and apples.
It is that they say people, and they probably people these cannabis things look like candy. They're going to hand them out to kids, and all the people said, "Dude, those are expensive. You don't waste them on kids."
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. I'm out of touch with drug culture. Anyway, I'm out of touch with a lot of things. Anyway, so.
I was gonna say, oh no, candy corn is gonna be scarce. Anyway, next story.
Well, anyway, this one is actually pretty amazing. There is actually a cheap drug that will actually help you with COVID. Unfortunately, it's not the one people are taking. People are taking around the horse stuff, ivermectin, and hydroxychloroquine because they're Republicans and they hate science and medicine and they do stuff that they make up instead of doing real stuff. But there is, in fact, a cheap drug for like $4 that will greatly decrease your chance of needing hospitalization and dying by a lot, by like 40%. It's not a miracle drug, but it does lower. They had 16% of people that went on to get terribly sick. And if they took this drug, that went down to 11%. And so it is, I'm looking for the name of the thing. They expect it to be fluvoxamine is the stuff. Costs $4. It's all it costs for a course of treatment, which is bloody awesome. Of course, if you just took the vaccine, you wouldn't need this stuff, but and the people who won't take the vaccine don't listen to normal news and don't believe science and probably will never get it, but maybe inside the hospitals, they could be handing this stuff out. And certainly in other nations where the problem is not that people refuse science and medicine as a matter of religion, but they just can't afford expensive medicine, this could really save a lot of lives. So anyway, they do have a drug which is doing what they claimed hydroxychloroquine would do. It makes you a lot safer. So anyway, that's a good thing to see. And it's another one of these off-label uses. So it's a drug that's already approved for human use, just having another purpose, which means you can skip most of the regulatory approvals and everything.
So anyway, you aren't going to take it up because it's already approved.
That's right. All you have to do, you can already prescribe drugs off-label. You don't even need special permission for that. So it should be a pretty fast thing to just approve it for this purpose. And Kaitlyn has the big hack. Boy, I remember thinking about this one for a week. 130 million bucks.
130 million bucks stolen from Cream. Cream got creamed, apparently. So Vice has an article written by Edward, on Wesso Jr. I'm sorry, I messed up that person's name. So yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about this other than some hacker managed to mess up a smart contract and get $130 million out of it, and left a very cryptic note. And let me see if I can't find it. It should be in this article.
All your base are belong to us.
I see it. Dave Lucky, Iron Bank Lucky, Cream Knot.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I found it. It says,
yeah. So Brave Lucky, comma, Iron Bank Lucky, comma, Cream Knot, comma, YDev, colon, incest bad, comma, don't do.
so he has a manifesto, a political statement.
Yeah, don't do incest. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so clearly this was a politically motivated by the anti-incest extremists.
Well, if he gives it back next week, I'm going to complain like I complained about the 600 million a few months ago. What kind of person steals 600 million and then just gives it back? Like, what the hell?
Right. So Cream is part of the new decentralized finance stuff. And as they're learning, maybe, the government, getting the government out of our money wasn't the best idea, because when something like this happens, who are they going to turn to?
I mean, we lived through this before the 1929 crash. You have crooked banks, you have runs on the bank, you have people that loan money that's not there, you have Ponzi schemes. And so we invented like the Security Exchange Commission, the FDIC, the laws, financial regulations, and all that jazz. And then people go make banks outside all that system and they get ripped off. And they're like,
yeah, it's like, yeah, it's like the ANCAPs or the super duper libertarians who are like, if we just cut all taxes and stop all government programs, things would be so much better. And it's like, dude, have you read history?
You'd have the Wild West. You'd have guys with 6 guns just shooting it out in the street.
Right. Like, have you read about like companies poisoning the people to make a quick buck? Like, that won't ever happen. Like, dude, read a history book.
And of course, all the banks are just stealing all the money and getting robbed right and left, obviously.
Yes.
Kaitlyn, everything you said is fake news.
Yeah, I know. It's Fox News and Newsmax and MSNBC. I'll say that. What I have to say is clearly fake, and we should all just vote for the respective parties and ignore everything I have to say and everything history has to say.
Well, yeah,
absolutely.
Well, anyway, these people have achieved escaping the financial system, and God have mercy on them. Anyway, all right, and Irvin has got the last one, container security.
Because it's necessary.
We could use some of that, I guess.
Could use some of that. And that's why I stuck this article in here, or this guide of what to do with containers, because they're everywhere. They're not going anywhere. And people often forget to scan them and check them to see if they have a bug in them or something worse.
He makes it look pretty daunting. He's got like a dozen categories of container vulnerabilities and different scanners for it all and stuff.
He does, but I kind of don't mind it that there's plenty of information. Yeah,
just, it looks like if I was running a company, I would say, we're going to have to make a significant investment to do all this. And then I would ask how many containers actually got hacked this year. And I don't know. But I imagine containers will get hacked soon enough. There people have said from the start that containers are less secure than virtual machines.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're just complicated and people are daunted by them. I imagine there's going to be a lot more hacking of them in the future as people learn them.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for this one. And I believe it's Friday. So we will be back on Tuesday.
Yes, that's exactly right.
I've got it right for once.